She did not mean to move. Her body simply chose for her. One heartbeat she was standing in the center of the throne hall. Every eye of the kingdom on her, the scent of cold stone and torch smoke pressed tight in her lungs. The next she had turned, stepped up the carved obsidian steps, and settled herself on the Alpha King's lap as if the crescent moon throne had been made for both of them. Gasps rippled through the hall like a breaking tide. Warriors stiffened, claws half-shifted beneath leather bracers. The pack council surged to its feet. Somewhere back by the doors, rogue wolves who had come only to watch a spectacle began to murmur. Lyra felt all of it. Every tremor, every shiver of outrage and shock. But what she truly felt was him. The Alpha King's chest was a solid wall of heat at her back, shield and furnace all at once. His arm curved around her waist on instinct, fingers flexing once against the fabric of her silver blue gown, as if his wolf had seized control faster than his mind could catch up. Lyra, he breathed, the word a low growl meant for her ears alone. Her chosen mate snarled her name too, but in a very different way. Omega. Alpha Darius of the Iron Crag pack stood just below the dais, shoulders wide enough to block 3 men, jaw clenched hard. Get off him. Lyra's bloodline mark. A faint crescent of pale silver on the inside of her wrist, burned. Her bond mark pulsed beneath her skin with a heat that did not answer Darius at all. She stared at the red carpet stretching between the pillars, the white banners with their stylized wolf sigils, the waiting pack council. She couldn't make herself turn to face Darius. She could still taste his scent from the earlier introduction. Sharp and metallic, like iron rusted in old blood. Behind her, the Alpha King shifted, just enough that his breath brushed her ear. His scent was different, storm rain and pine forest and something clean, like snow on stone. She had grown up hearing that scent described in whispers and prayers. The scent of the Alpha King of Ardentia, Caelan Nightwind, the moon goddess's chosen heir. I won't let him touch you, Caelan murmured, so softly the words seemed to land directly on her skin. Her hands trembled where they rested on his, laced over the black leather of his vambrace. The hall might as well have vanished. There was only the solid weight of his body, the deep slow thud of his heart against her spine, the way his wolf pressed against her own through that single sentence. Forbidden. Every law of the kingdom screamed the word at once. The Omega pledged by council decree to one Alpha could not sit on the throne, could not choose another, could not seek the protection of the Alpha King himself. Pack law was carved into the very stones beneath her feet. Omega destiny had never meant choice. Until now, apparently. High Lord Theron rose from the semicircle of stone seats, council ring glinting with moonstone. Your Majesty, he said, each syllable sharp as ice. This ceremony is sacred. The Omega has been chosen. She must stand with her mate. Remove her from your lap. Now. Lyra's pulse roared loud in her ears. Caelan's arm tightened almost imperceptibly. For one suspended moment, the Alpha King of Ardentia did not move, silver eyes burning down over the hall like twin crescent moons. His wolf howled quietly inside him. Interesting, he said, voice smooth, lazy even. Because I see an Omega invoking the oldest law of all. Every counselor stiffened. Darius bared his teeth. What law? He bit out. She is mine by council bond. By treaty. By bloodline. The law of sanctuary, Caelan said, fingers splaying over Lyra's waist in a gesture that looked casual and felt like a claim. An Omega who seeks the throne's protection cannot be touched by any Alpha until the moon goddess has spoken. Lyra swallowed, throat suddenly dry. She hadn't known she was invoking anything but survival. But as the Alpha King's power rolled out across the throne hall like a dark tide, making every wolf lower their head, she realized one thing with startling, bone-deep certainty. She had just changed the course of her fate, and possibly the fate of the entire kingdom, with a single terrified step. Lyra's legs barely remembered how to work when Caelan finally allowed her to stand. Easy, he murmured, his hand firm beneath her elbow as he helped her down from the throne. The hall watched the simple touch as if he'd kissed her under the blood moon. The ceremony had been suspended. The Pack Council was furious but bound, at least for tonight, by the words the Alpha King had spoken. Sanctuary was an ancient law, older than the written codes etched into the castle stones, older than the current throne itself. The moon goddess's first alpha had sworn that no omega who sought shelter in the king's shadow would be forced into a claim against her will. The law had fallen into legend. And legends, the council liked to say, did not belong in practical politics. Now Lyra had dragged it back into the throne hall, by sitting on the Alpha King's lap. You will remain within the castle until the Moon Council meets. High Lord Theron had decreed in the tense silence that followed. We will consult the old scrolls. We will ask the temple. Until then your impulsive act stands. Darius had stalked away before Lyra could even look at him. His blood-heated scent slicing through the air like a threat. Rogues and warriors parted before him, avoiding his eyes. His pack would be muttering in the taverns of the lower village by now, calling her names omegas were never meant to hear. Traitor. Prize. Coward. The corridor beyond the throne hall was blessedly quiet. The polished stone floor reflected the light of wall torches, gold and amber dancing beneath her feet. Through tall slit windows, the crescent moon poured silver onto snow-dusted parapets outside. Lyra's hands were still shaking. Caelan noticed. Of course he did. Breathe, Omega, he said, the title on his tongue softer than any endearment she'd ever been given. You're safe in my kingdom. In your throne hall, you mean, she managed, her voice embarrassingly thin. The council looked at me like I'd howled blasphemy in the Moon Temple. You nearly did. A faint huff of humor warmed the edge of his words. Theron has been trying to bury sanctuary for years. She stopped walking. The hem of her gown brushed the floor, torn silk whispering against stone. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't plan it. I just couldn't make myself go to him. To Darius. Her chosen mate. The Alpha the Pack Elders had decided would best secure a fragile peace between their mountain territories and his iron-rich ravines. Lyra of the Willowfen bloodline, traded like a carved wooden token across a map. Caelan turned to face her. He was still wearing his formal armor, black steel traced with silver runes, his fur mantle shadowing the sharp lines of his jaw. Silver eyes met hers, calm and clear, though she could scent the tension coiled beneath his skin, the barely leashed power of his wolf form. What did you scent on him? He asked quietly. She should lie. She should say nothing. She should remember every drilled lesson about respect and obedience. Instead, Lyra closed her eyes and remembered the first moment Darius had taken her hand, back in the receiving chamber. The way his fingers had closed too tight. The way his scent had smothered instead of steadied. Iron, she whispered. And old blood. An emptiness. No bond, no pull, nothing. My wolf hid from him. Her throat thickened. I thought I was broken. The Alpha King's expression shifted, something like fury flashing over his features before he smoothed it away. You are not broken, he said. You are unclaimed. That is a very different thing. She knew she shouldn't ask, but the question had burned in her since childhood, through every lonely run in the forests of her home pack. Have you ever felt it? She asked. The bond? The fated pull? Silence lapped around them, full of flickering torchlight and the distant howl of wolves from the outer walls. A patrol call, nothing more. The kingdom breathing. Caelan's gaze dropped, almost against his will, to the place where her bloodline mark glowed faintly on her wrist. Yes, he said at last, voice low. Once. Her heart stuttered. With who? His lips curved without humor. The moon goddess has a sharp sense of irony, he said. Come. I'll not leave you wandering the halls with the Ironcrag pack still pacing the lower levels. He offered his arm. For a suspended breath, Lyra hesitated. Every rule she'd been raised on screaming that an Omega did not walk so close to the Alpha King unless claimed. But tonight she had already broken so many rules she'd lost count. She slid her hand into the crook of his elbow. His scent deepened, storm ice and pine and something warmer beneath. A spark of wolf heat that made her bond mark thrum harder against her skin. He led her up a spiral staircase into the quieter wings of the castle, where stained glass windows painted the stone with pale moonlight, and wolves howled on ancient tapestries. Where are we going? She asked. To a place, Caelan said, where the council's eyes cannot reach, and where an Omega who dared sit on my lap may breathe without every law in the realm pressing on her shoulders. His words should have frightened her. Instead, they steadied her, like a hand against the small of her back as she walked into unknown darkness. And somewhere deep inside, where her wolf curled up around a single, impossible truth, Lyra knew this for certain. The Alpha King's fated mate was not some distant myth. It was her. The chamber he brought her to did not feel like a prison. Lyra had seen holding rooms before, when visiting packs sent troublemakers or drunk warriors to be kept overnight after festivals. Bare walls, cold cots, barred windows. This room was nothing like that. A fire burned low in a stone hearth. Furs lay stacked by the bed, soft and thick enough to nest in. A carved wooden screen divided the washing area from the sleeping space, its surface etched with crescent moons and running wolves. The single window looked out over the inner courtyard, where snow lay in smooth white curves along the edges of the frozen fountain. Lyra drifted toward the glass as Caelan closed the door behind them. From this angle, she could see the tops of the throne hall's pillars, the distant flicker of torches where sentries patrolled the walls, and beyond them, the dark sweep of the forest that ringed Ardentia's capital like a waiting wolf. Is this, she hesitated, is this a guest room? These are my private quarters, Caelan said simply. She jolted, turning so quickly her braid thumped against her shoulder. I shouldn't be here. You invoked sanctuary on my throne. He moved past her, shedding his fur mantle, and setting it over the back of a chair. You are under my protection until the Moon Council decides otherwise. No Alpha, not even Darius, may cross this threshold tonight. She wrapped her arms around herself. The weight of his words settled on her like a cloak. His scent was stronger here. Storm and pine clung to the air, threaded with smoke from the hearth, the faint leather tang of armor oil. A wolf pelt hung along one wall, its fur silver white, eyes closed, not in death but in a carved sort of peace. You sleep here, she murmured, because it was easier than thinking about everything else. You dream here. You shift here. His eyes widened a fraction, as if no one had spoken of his private life so plainly in years. Yes, he said. I often forget Omegas notice those things. Omegas notice everything. The words slipped out. We're the ones who feel it first when a bond is wrong, or when the pack is holding its breath, or when a law cuts deep in a place no scar shows. He was very still as he watched her. You don't speak like a simple village Omega, Caelan said, coming closer. What did Willowfen teach you, Lyra? That my bloodline carries too much moon magic to be left unmarried, she said, forcing herself to hold his gaze. That the moon goddess marked my great-grandmother during a blood moon, and ever since then, our bond marks glow brighter than they should. That the Pack Council sees my existence as a resource. She lifted her wrist. The crescent there shone faintly, as if reflecting the firelight. In truth, it was more than that. Her bond mark had always been too bright, even as a child. It had drawn stares, whispers, attempts to hide it beneath braided leather and cloth. Prophecy, Caelan murmured. They think you're a living prophecy. A bargaining chip, Lyra corrected quietly. A way to bind Ironcrag with some golden thread they think the moon goddess cares about. And what do you think? He stepped close enough that the heat of his body brushed her front like a tide, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his silver gaze. Do you believe the moon goddess cares who you share your bed with? Lyra swallowed. I think she cares what kind of alpha touches me. His breath hitched, almost imperceptibly, the space between them filled with 1,000 unsaid things. His wolf pressed hard against his skin. She could feel it, a restless prowl just beneath the surface. Her own wolf had come alive the instant she'd sat on his lap, paws dug in, ears forward, tail rigid with unbearable hope. Fated, her wolf whispered. Ours. Alpha, King. You should rest, Caelan said at last, voice rougher than before. Tomorrow the temple will send word. The Pack Council will gather. They will argue for their treaties and their laws. A muscle jumped in his jaw. And I will argue for your right to be more than a contract sealed in ink and blood. Her chest ached. Why? She asked. You hardly know me, your majesty. His gaze dropped briefly to her throat, where her pulse beat too fast. My wolf knows you, Caelan said quietly. And the moon goddess does not make mistakes with bond marks this bright. Heat raced through her veins, heady and terrifying. You felt it, she whispered. When I sat on your lap. A faint, humorless smile ghosted over his mouth. Lyra, I felt it the moment your scent crossed the outer gates this afternoon. She remembered the sudden weight in the air when her carriage had rolled into the courtyard. The way the guards had straightened. The way a distant howl had cut off mid-note, as if startled. Sleep, he said again, taking a step back as if distance alone could smother the bond flaring between them. You have my word, Omega. Nothing in this kingdom will touch you without your consent. Not even me. The promise should have soothed her. Instead, Lyra felt her wolf surge forward at those last 3 words, pressing paws against the bars of her ribs. Not even me. But what if she wanted him to? Sleep did not come easily. Lyra lay under the weight of the fur mantle he'd insisted she take, its warmth smelling like him, staring at the carved beams of the ceiling while moonlight crept across the floor. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the throne hall again, heard the shocked silence as she stepped into the Alpha King's lap. She saw another hall too, older and smaller, in her home village of Willowfen. A fire crackling in the hearth, elders' faces lined with worry. Her mother's fingers twisting her own faded bond mark bracelet. Listen, Lyra. Her mother had said that night, voice trembling. There is a prophecy about our bloodline. The moon goddess promised that when the bonds of this kingdom became chains instead of blessings, a Willowfen Omega with a crescent brighter than any before would sit beside the throne and break the old laws. Lyra had been 12, more interested in sneaking out to run with the village pups beneath the crescent moon than in prophecies. That's just a story, she'd muttered. The Alpha King would never let an Omega change his laws. You don't know this Alpha King, her mother had replied. He has already rewritten one war treaty. He spared rogue wolves when the council wanted heads. He listens to the temple. He listens to dreams. Still, Lyra had not believed. Until today. A soft sound drew her from her thoughts. Not a door, not a voice. The faint metallic clink of armor. She rose, wrapping the fur tighter around her shoulders, and padded quietly toward the door. It had not latched fully. A crack of light shone through. Beyond, she could hear the low murmur of voices in the corridor. Cannot keep her here, High Lord Theron was saying. Sanctuary delays the ceremony, it does not erase it. The treaty with Ironcrag is written in the blood of both our packs. And perhaps it should not have been, came Caelan's calm reply. Lyra breathed in, slow and steady, letting their scents curl under the door. Theron's smell was parchment and old stone. Caelan's was the storm about to break. You would risk war with a rival Alpha Pack for an unruly Omega? Theron demanded. The law is clear. The moon goddess may mark bloodlines, but it is the council who decides alliances. The law, Caelan said, each word like an iron nail, was written by alphas who feared losing control. There was a rustle of cloth, as if Theron had drawn himself up. You speak dangerously, your majesty. I speak of what I have seen, Caelan said. Omegas sent to mates whose wolves do not call to theirs. Bonds turned to leashes. Tears shed in silence so we can call it peace. Lyra's throat closed. He'd seen it too then. The quiet heartbreaks nobody talked about. The temple itself blessed the Ironcrag Treaty, Theron insisted. The moon goddess wants this union. Does she? Caelan's voice dropped, threaded with something wild. Because when that Omega walked into my throne hall, the bond between us roared awake like a long-sleeping wolf. You felt it. The council felt it. The moon goddess's will was clear. Silence. Lyra pressed her back against the wall, heart hammering. She is fated to you? Theron's voice had thinned, all certainty gone. Yes, Caelan said simply. And you will not force my fated mate into another alpha's hands and call it law. Lyra's knees nearly gave out. Theron hissed in a breath. If you claim her, the treaty shatters. Ironcrag will march. The Blood Moon War could begin again. Ardentia cannot bleed like that, not for one Omega, no matter how bright her bond mark. I know the cost. Caelan's tone held centuries of kingship. That is why I have not marked her. Why I will stand before the Moon Council and ask for a new path. One where an Omega's choice is law, not a bargaining chip. And if the council refuses? The silence on the other side of the door felt like a drawn bowstring. Then the moon goddess will decide, Caelan said. Under her sky, before her temple, with the Pax as witness. I am done binding omegas like lambs for slaughter. Footsteps retreated down the corridor. Lyra stayed where she was, eyes burning. Fated mate. He had said it without flinching. Her wolf pressed against her ribs, keening quietly. Not just for the impossible hope of being loved, but for the weight of what that love would cost. War. Law. Blood on snow. Some destinies felt like blessings. Some felt like blades. The next day dawned pale and bitterly cold, the kind of winter morning where sound carried strangely across the courtyard. Lyra stood at the window, watching warriors run drills in the frost-crisp air, their breath blooming white. Above them, the crescent moon still clung faintly to the sky, refusing to depart even as the sun strained to rise. A knock sounded at the door. She turned, clutching the fur mantle tighter. Yes. It's only me, Caelan said through the wood. May I enter? She hesitated, an Omega, standing alone in the Alpha King's chamber, but then she remembered his promise. Nothing would touch her without her consent. Not even him. Yes, she said, heart trying to escape through her throat. He stepped inside with less armor than last night. A black leather tunic, fur-lined cloak thrown carelessly over one shoulder, sword belted at his hip. Without the steel, he looked more wolf than king, muscles moving easily beneath the leather, silver eyes sharper somehow. You slept? He asked. Enough, she lied. He studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the door. The temple has sent word. The Moon Council will meet at dusk. Until then you are confined to the inner grounds. I thought, he hesitated, which startled her more than anything. I thought perhaps you would prefer the forest to the council chamber halls. You'd let me leave the castle? Lyra blinked. With half the kingdom debating my fate? Not alone, Caelan said. With me. The idea of walking beside him in wolf-haunted woods, his scent wrapped around her like a cloak, his presence shielding her from the weight of eyes. Her wolf practically spun with longing. I would like that, she said softly. He smiled then, brief and startling. Good. The walls are too loud when politics clamor. Come. The sentries have been warned. No alpha comes near you without my teeth in his throat. You can't bite the entire council, she said before she could stop herself. Oh, little Omega, he murmured as he held the door for her. You underestimate me. The inner courtyard was busy, but when the Alpha King and the sanctuary marked Omega crossed the cobbles, a path opened as if by instinct. Warriors dipped their heads. Omegas in gray cloaks peered from doorways, eyes wide, sent a curious mix of fear and fierce, bright hope. Lyra felt their gaze like a touch. Do they hate me? She whispered as they passed through the gate into the snow-bright forest beyond. Some fear chaos, Caelan said. Some fear Ironcrag's wrath. Most are simply not used to seeing anyone defy the council and live. The forest swallowed the castle noise in a hush of snow and pine. Frost-laced branches arched overhead, heavy with silence. A narrow path wound between the trees. Wolf tracks pressed deep along its edges. Lyra inhaled deeply. The scents here were familiar. Earth sap, faint rabbit trails, fox musk, the distant tang of a running stream under ice. And his scent, always, a steady pulse beside her. You grew up in trees like these, he said, as if reading her memories. Willowfen's woods are thicker though. Older. You know Willowfen? Surprise warmed her cheeks. I've ridden patrol through half this kingdom. Caelan brushed a low branch aside, letting snow fall in a glittering curtain behind them. Your alpha once brought me a cask of their winter wine, and a tale about an Omega girl whose bond mark glowed brighter than the others. Heat flared under Lyra's skin. They gossip about me with kings now? They asked for my guidance, he corrected. They feared the council would try to use you. I advised caution. His jaw tightened. I did not expect them to deliver you to my door bound to another alpha. They thought they were protecting the pack, she said quietly. Ironcrag is strong. Darius controls 3 iron mines. The council promised they would watch him. Make sure he treated me well. Caelan stopped walking. Omegas do not need treatment, Lyra. They need respect. Choice. a bond that does not make their wolves cower. She turned to face him. Snowflakes drifted between them, catching in his dark hair, melting on his lashes. My choice, she said, the words trembling out of her like a secret, is already made. His breath misted in the cold. His wolf shoved against his skin so sharply she could almost see its silhouette overlaying his form, silver-eyed and furious and desperately gentle. Say it, he whispered, stepping closer until his warmth chased away the bite of winter. Say it plain, Omega, and I will tear down every law in this kingdom to make it true. Her bond mark burned. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the distant caw of a crow went silent. You are my alpha, Lyra said, voice breaking on the truth. My fated mate. My wolf chose you the moment your scent touched the air. He closed his eyes. For a moment, his hands curled into fists at his sides, like a man trying not to reach for fire. Lyra, he said, voice raw. If I claim you now, Ironcrag marches before the moon turns. The Pack Council invokes old war codes. The Blood Moon prophecy wakes. This kingdom could drown in its own history. I know. Pain lanced her chest. But if you don't? If I don't, he said slowly. They put their collar around your throat and call it alliance. Her throat tightened. I would rather die than let him touch me. His eyes snapped open, silver blazing. Do not say that, he snarled softly. The moon goddess did not bring you to my throne so I could watch you die. He reached out as if to grab her shoulders, and stopped, fingers hovering a breath from her cloak. May I, he asked. Tears burned behind her eyes. Yes, she whispered. His hands landed on her shoulders, heavy and anchoring. Heat flared along her nerves. She felt the barest brush of his thumb against the side of her throat, where a mark might someday sit. Trust me, Caelan said. Whatever the council decides tonight, I will not let him touch you, even if it means the moon goddess herself calls me Oathbreaker. The vow hung between them like a drawn blade, bright and terrible. And somewhere above the frost-bound branches, the crescent moon watched, thin and sharp as a wolf's smile. Dusk painted the castle in bruised violets and silver when they returned. Torches blazed alive along the walls, their flames reflected in the icy stone. Wolves howled from the outer watchtowers, a rolling chorus that answered the rising moon. Lyra's skin prickled with the coming tension. Even the air felt thicker, the very stones bracing for what the night would demand. The Moon Council convened in the temple hall, not the throne room. Lyra had never been inside before. She had seen its white spires from the village roads, heard of the crescent-shaped pool at its center, the ceiling painted in phases of the moon. Now she walked beside the Alpha King through its carved doors, her heart beating so loud she was sure they could all hear it. The temple hall was as breathtaking as the stories promised. White stone columns rose like frozen trees, their surfaces etched with runes. A circular pool lay in the middle of the room, its surface as still and dark as night. Above it, an opening in the roof revealed the crescent moon directly, hanging low and sharp in the sky, bathing the pool in silver light. High Priestess Mara stood at the water's edge, robes of deep blue trimmed with moonstone. Around the pool, the Pack Council had taken their places. Theron with his rings, lords from mountain and valley packs, even a representative from Ironcrag, Darius at his side. Lyra's stomach churned at the sight of her supposed mate. He was dressed in iron-gray armor, cloak lined with wolf fur from his own pack, jaw shadowed with stubble. His eyes slid over her and Caelan, contempt curling his mouth. The Moon Council recognizes the Alpha King of Ardentia, Mara intoned, and the Omega Lyra of Willowfen, for whom sanctuary has been invoked. Lyra took her place beside Caelan, just behind the line of the pool. The water reflected her face, pale and wide-eyed, the twin glows of the crescent moon above and her bond mark below. The matter is simple, Theron began, voice echoing off the high ceiling. The Omega was pledged to Alpha Darius by council decree and temple blessing. The sanctuary law delays the union only until the Moon Council confirms her safety. She is safe. Therefore, she is not safe, Caelan cut in, his tone calm but carrying enough power that the nearest torch flickered. Her wolf recoils from him. The bond does not answer. You would call that safety. Darius's fingers tightened on the hilt of his sword. An Omega's feelings do not determine treaties, he snarled. She has been fed too many stories. Give her to me, your majesty, and I will teach her proper respect. A low growl rumbled from Caelan's chest before he could stop it. Lyra's own wolf snarled back, hackles up. Mara raised a hand. Silence. The Moon Council will hear all sides before judgment. The temple bears witness for the Moon Goddess. Speak, child. Lyra blinked. The High Priestess's gaze rested on her, not on Caelan, not on Darius. On her. Tell us, Mara said gently. What your wolf says. The hall blurred around the edges. Lyra stepped closer to the pool, the moon's reflection trembling under her breath. When I met Alpha Darius, she said, forcing each word out steady and clear. My wolf hid. She did not recognize him. She felt only fear. She turned toward Caelan. His face was carved stone, but his eyes were soft. When I smelled the Alpha King scent the first time, Lyra whispered. My wolf rose. She howled inside me. My bond mark burned. Every story my mother told me about the Moon Goddess and the throne came back all at once, and I knew. She inhaled. He is my fated mate. The words hung in the hall like sparks. Theron scoffed. Omegas are impressionable. The presence of the Alpha King. The temple has records of true bonds. Mara interrupted quietly. The signs are not subtle. She moved closer, reaching for Lyra's wrist. May I? Lyra nodded. The High Priestess lifted her arm, turning it so the bond mark faced the crescent moon. Light poured down, silver and pure, striking the mark like an arrow. It blazed. Gasps rippled through the council. The crescent on Lyra's skin shone with fierce, steady brilliance, brighter than it ever had in Willowfen, brighter than it had in the throne hall. The pool below mirrored the glow, sending pale ripples of light across the vaulted ceiling. This is strong, Mara murmured. Old. Willowfen's bloodline, yes, but awakened. Her gaze flicked to Caelan. When did you first scent her, your majesty? The moment her carriage passed the gates, he said. My wolf nearly tore the stone from the walls to reach her. And you, Omega? Mara asked. When did you feel his bond? Lyra's cheeks burned. When I stepped from the carriage, she whispered. The air changed. My wolf said, There. There. The priestess nodded slowly. Theron's mouth twisted. Bond or not, the treaty. The Moon Goddess's law precedes your treaties, Mara said sharply. You have bound too many Omegas with ink and fear. Perhaps it is time the bonds themselves spoke louder than your signatures. Darius snarled, stepping forward. What of my rights? I was promised an Omega with strong magic. My pack sacrificed territory for this alliance. Now you would strip me of what I am owed because she panted after a king's scent. Lyra flinched. Caelan's hand brushed her back, a barely there touch, his wolf's fury trembling under his skin. You were promised nothing the Moon Goddess did not also approve, Mara said coldly. If she marked another path. Then she is mistaken, Darius snapped. Or you are. He pointed at Lyra. She is mine. Sanctuary law or not. I will claim her before the next blood moon. Ardentia cannot risk my anger. The hall went deadly quiet. Caelan stepped fully between Lyra and Darius, his presence a wall of storm ice and steel. If you touch her without her consent, he said, voice so soft it shook the air, you will not live to see another moonrise. The water in the pool trembled, ripples spreading from its center as if some unseen force had brushed it. Mara's eyes widened. The Moon Goddess hears, she whispered. Somewhere outside, a wolf howled, a long, low, mournful sound that seemed to wrap around the temple like a warning. The council will give its answer by dawn, Theron said tightly. Until then, the Omega remains under sanctuary. He spoke as if the matter were closed. But Lyra could feel it in the air, in the way the torches burned too bright, and the moonlight bit too cold. Nothing was closed. Everything was about to break. The breaking came sooner than dawn. Lyra could not rest. She paced Caelan's chamber like a caged wolf, listening to faint echoes of raised voices from the lower halls. The council would argue all night. Some would side with Ironcrag, others with the temple. Her fate, stretched between them like a rope, might snap under the strain. A gust of wind rattled the window. She went to latch it, then froze. Down in the inner courtyard, shadows moved where no warriors should be. 5, 6 shapes slipping between the pillars, cloaks dark as pooled ink. The torches along the wall had been dimmed, their flames unnaturally low. Her wolf bristled. Danger! She cracked the window open a fraction, letting the cold air rush in. Their scents climbed up to meet her. Iron. Smoke. And beneath it, a familiar metallic tang. Darius. Lyra's stomach dropped. They were heading for the side entrance that led to the Omega Wing, where visiting Omegas slept, where she would have been housed if Caelan hadn't brought her here. She didn't think. She ran. The corridors twisted around her in stone and shadow. She flew down staircases, her bare feet silent, for mantle billowing behind her. A pair of guards called after her, but she was already gone, racing toward the lower halls where the air smelled like copper and cold stone. Voices echoed ahead. She slowed, pressing herself against a column as she peered around the corner. Darius stood in the archway of the Omega Wing, sword drawn, a ring of Ironcrag warriors at his back. 2 castle sentries lay stunned against the wall, breathing but unmoving. Behind Darius, Theron hovered, face pale. "This is madness," the counselor hissed. "The council has not decided." "The council dithers," Darius snapped. "I do not. Sanctuary prevents the king from giving her to me. It does not prevent me from taking what is mine." Lyra's blood went ice cold. "Take her from the king's own quarters and this becomes war," Theron warned. "Then let it be war," Darius snarled. "Ardentia has grown weak under his soft temple-loving rule. The moon goddess favors the strong." His eyes gleamed. "And she favors those who claim what they are owed." Lyra's wolf was a storm in her chest. For a heartbeat, terror pinned her, made her breathing shallow and fast. If he reached Caelan's chamber. Caelan. He was in the council chamber, arguing law. He might not even know Darius had slipped his leash. Lyra pressed trembling fingers to the bond mark on her wrist. "Moon goddess," she prayed silently. "If you ever meant those stories about my bloodline, help me now." Her wolf steadied, as if bracing for a leap. She stepped out from behind the column. "Looking for me?" she called. Every head whipped around. Darius's eyes flared, hungry and furious all at once. "Omega," he growled. "There you are." Theron looked like he might faint. "Lyra." She ignored him. Her heart hammered, but her spine was straight, her wolf teeth bared inside. "You don't need to crawl through shadows to find me, Alpha," she said, voice surprisingly steady. "I am not hiding." "Not anymore," Darius said, stalking toward her, sword still in hand. "You will come with me. Now. The council can scold me later." He reached for her arm. Lyra moved first. She turned and ran, not away, but toward the temple courtyard. Toward the one place in this castle where law bent under older power. "After her." Darius roared. Boots thundered behind her. Ironcrag warriors howled, half-shifted, claws scraping stone. Lyra's breath tore in her throat as she sprinted through the archways, past startled acolytes, past a statue of the moon goddess with arms raised toward the sky. The temple hall doors loomed ahead, slightly ajar, moonlight spilling through the crack. She flung them open and stumbled inside. The hall was mostly empty. Mara knelt by the pool, murmuring prayers. She spun as Lyra crashed in, skirts tangled, hair falling loose from its braid. "Child." "He's coming," Lyra gasped. "He means to claim me by force." Mara's eyes flashed. "Under the open moon? He would not dare." "He would," Lyra said, because she had seen the hunger in his eyes, the entitlement. "I invoke sanctuary on the throne. I invoke it here. In the temple. In the moon goddess's sight." The high priestess rose, power gathering around her like a storm. The doors slammed open again. Darius strode in, boots loud on stone, sword still bare. Ironcrag wolves fanned out behind him, their scents burning like iron. "You run well for an Omega," he drawled. "You will make strong heirs." Lyra's stomach turned. Mara stepped between them. "Put away your blade," she said, voice ringing. "This is sacred ground. The moon goddess will not tolerate blood spilled beside her pool." "I do not intend to spill blood," Darius said. only to mark what is mine. He lunged. Lyra backpedaled, heart in her throat, but his hand closed around her wrist, fingers digging into her bond mark. Pain shot up her arm, bright and burning. Her wolf shrieked. Stop! Mara cried. Power flared, but Darius shook her off, his will fueled by rage and greed. Scream all you like, he snarled into Lyra's face. No one will. The temple doors exploded inward. Wind howled through the hall, carrying the scent of storm and pine in pure, unrestrained fury. Get your hands off my mate, Caelan roared. He strode through the shattered doorway, wolf half risen under his skin, silver eyes blazing like twin moons. Warriors spilled in behind him. Castle guards, forest scouts, even a few village alphas called by the sudden shift in the bond's storm. Darius tightened his grip. She is. Whatever he meant to say was lost as Caelan hit him. The Alpha King moved like a wolf unleashed, all controlled grace and lethal intent gone. He slammed into Darius with enough force to send both of them crashing to the floor, steel ringing against stone. Lyra stumbled back, clutching her burning wrist, as power crackled in the air. Caelan, Theron gasped, appearing at the edge of the pool. If you draw blood here. He laid hands on my fated mate under the open moon. Caelan snarled, teeth lengthening, voice just this side of a growl. There is no law he has not already broken. Darius rolled, swinging his sword. The blade caught Caelan's arm, drawing a line of bright red across leather. The scent of alpha blood hit the air like lightning. Lyra's wolf screamed, and the moon goddess answered. The pool erupted in light. Silver surged upward in a column, blindingly bright, striking the ceiling and fanning out like a halo. Everyone froze, the combatants mid-strike, counselors mid-breath, Mara mid-step. Lyra felt the power as a physical force, pressing on her skin, pushing into her lungs. It smelled like moonlight and cold river water, and something vast and ancient. Enough, a voice said. It was not a sound exactly, not in the way words usually were. It vibrated through stone and bone and bloodline. Older than any throne, older than any law. Every wolf in the room dropped to their knees, eyes wide and wild. Even Darius's snarl shattered into a whimper as his wolf cowered. Lyra staggered, almost falling, until Caelan's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. His blood warmed her side, but he was breathing, heart drumming against her shoulder. The light condensed, drawing back toward the pool. In its center, just above the water's surface, a figure took shape, a woman of pale light and shadow, hair like spilling starlight, eyes crescent silver. The moon goddess. Lyra forgot how to breathe. Mara knelt, forehead touching stone. Lady, she whispered. You honor us. The goddess barely seemed to hear. Her gaze rested on Lyra and Caelan, on the blood marking his sleeve, on the bruises already blooming on Lyra's wrist where Darius's fingers had squeezed. Omegas, the voice murmured, echoing inside Lyra's skull. My daughters bound and bartered. My sons chained to laws that twist their wolves. How tired I am of watching you wound each other in my name. Lyra's eyes burned. Tears spilled over, hot and helpless. Caelan bowed his head. Lady, forgive us, he said hoarsely. Our laws. Your laws, she said, voice suddenly sharp, were meant to protect the weak, not bind them for convenience. She drifted closer, feet never touching stone. Lyra could feel the chill radiating from her. Not cruel but vast, like standing on the edge of a mountain cliff in winter. You, the goddess said, looking at Lyra. Child of Willowfen, bright-marked. Do you choose this alpha as your mate? Not for treaties, not for fear, not for prophecy, but for the way your wolf answers his howl. Lyra's voice shook. Yes, she whispered. I choose him. I chose him the moment I scented him. And you, the goddess said, turning to Caelan. Alpha King, heir of the throne, bound by duty and blood. Will you claim this Omega not as shield or symbol, but as Luna, as partner, as the one whose word weighs as much as yours? Caelan's arm tightened around Lyra. Yes, he said without hesitation. I claimed her in my heart the moment she stepped into my hall. The rest of me is only catching up. Something like a smile flickered over the goddess's features. Her gaze snapped to Darius. And you, she said, her voice dropping to a chill that made the torches gutter. Would you force a bond against an Omega's will and call it my blessing? Darius shook, every inch of him trembling. I sought only what I was promised, he stammered. The council, the treaties. Your ambition, she cut in, is your own. Do not hang it on my stars. She lifted a hand. The runes along the temple walls flared, one by one, burning with silver fire. Lyra felt bonds breaking in that light, old, rigid threads binding Omegas to Alphas without consent, contracts written in fear and blood unraveling in the corners of the kingdom. The law of forced bonds, the moon goddess said, voice ringing like a bell, is broken. From this night on, no Omega shall be pledged without her willing heart. Any Alpha who marks an unwilling mate will find his wolf stripped, his howl silenced. A collective gasp shook the hall. Theron clutched his chest, eyes wide. The treaty with Ironcrag, she continued, is void. You built peace on the back of a girl's sacrificed future. That is not peace. Her gaze turned back to Caelan and Lyra. As for you two, Lyra's heart stopped. The goddess's eyes softened. My prophecy was clumsy, she said. I wove too much weight onto one bloodline. But the thread was true enough. A Willowfen Omega would sit beside the throne and change the laws that broke her sisters. She raised her hand, palm glowing. Kneel both of you. They did. Stone bit into Lyra's knees, Caelan's presence anchoring her side. The goddess touched Lyra's brow with one cool finger. Luna of Ardentia, she said, power flooding the words. Breaker of chains. Voice of the silenced. Rise. Lyra's bond mark blazed brighter than ever before. She felt power pour through her veins. Not the crushing weight of prophecy but the fierce, wild strength of choice honored. The goddess turned to Caelan, fingers brushing his forehead. Alpha King who listened when I whispered against old walls, she said. Who chose mercy where others chose war. Stand beside your Luna, and hear my last decree. Light swelled again, washing over the whole hall. Rewrite your laws, the moon goddess said. Let Omegas choose their mates. Let councils advise, not rule hearts. Let no throne stand so high it cannot kneel to love when love demands it. The light winked out. The hall plunged into silence, torches sputtering back to life one by one. The pool stilled, its surface once more reflecting only the crescent moon. Lyra swayed. Caelan caught her, pulling her against his chest. Are you real? She whispered, voice shaking with awe and terror and wild, wild relief. His laugh was ragged. I was about to ask you the same thing. Behind them, Mara rose, eyes still shining. You heard the goddess, she said, voice hushed and awed. Her will is clear. Theron slowly dropped to one knee before Caelan and Lyra. Your Majesty, he said. My Luna. His voice cracked on the new word. It seems the temple outranks the council after all. Darius stayed where he was, collapsed against a column, eyes hollow, wolf cowering inside him. Lyra almost felt pity. Almost. Caelan's hand stroked her back, slow and steady. His heart beat strong against her ear. We will do as she asks, he murmured. We will rewrite it all. Lyra leaned into him, tears finally spilling free. For the first time in her life, the future did not feel like a sentence. It felt like a door, flung wide under the crescent moon. The new laws did not write themselves overnight. The days that followed were a blur of ink and voices and long, exhausting council sessions. Lyra sat beside Caelan on the throne now. Not on his lap, though her wolf sometimes whined for that warmth, but on a carved seat at his right, its back etched with a crescent moon and a running wolf. Luna! Messengers called her now, bowing low. My lady. The words still felt strange on her tongue, but her wolf preened every time. She listened as Omegas came forward to speak, some shy, some furious, their stories spilling into the hall like a long-suppressed flood. The Omega from the eastern marshes who had been pledged as third mate to an Alpha twice her age. The quiet girl from the river pack who had never seen her supposed mate's face before the claiming night. The city Omega who had run to the temple rather than let an Alpha with cruel eyes lay hands on her. Lyra listened, and she did not let their voices be smoothed away. No more, she said firmly more than once, eyes burning as she met the council's gaze. The moon goddess stripped the law from us. We will not stitch it back together with new words to hide the same harms. Caelan backed her at every turn. Sometimes he spoke with patient reason, explaining to stubborn alphas how a willing mate made a stronger pack, how bonds built on respect strengthened the kingdom's armor. Sometimes he simply let his power roll out, silver eyes glowing, and asked them if they had not heard the goddess's warning about silenced howls. Iron Crag was another matter. Darius did not take his humiliation well. He left Ardentia within a week, his wolves bristling at his back. Rumors swirled. He had lost some of his strength when the goddess stripped the old law. His wolf quieter now, his temper more erratic. Will he start a war? Lyra asked one night, sitting with Caelan on a balcony overlooking the snowy courtyard. Lanterns cast soft light over the stone, turning his profile to something almost carved. Perhaps, Caelan said. But he will find fewer allies than before. Too many alphas heard the goddess's decree. Too many have omegas in their lives they cannot bear to lose. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder. The night smelled of cold air and wood smoke, the faint sweetness of winter flowers in the sheltered beds below. You're tired, he murmured, lips brushing her hair. Being Luna is a lot, she admits with a soft laugh. It's not just sitting pretty beside the throne like the stories said. Those stories were written by men who never watched a Luna hold a pack together while they tore at each other, Caelan said dryly. You've changed this hall more in a week than the council has in a decade. Her cheeks warmed. I just speak what I wish someone had spoken for me. Back when Willowfen first whispered treaty. He turned, tilting her chin up with gentle fingers. You spoke for yourself, he said. In front of a goddess. Don't forget that, Lyra. His thumb brushed her bond mark, peeking from beneath the edge of her sleeve. Heat flared between them, the bond humming like a lyre string. About that, she said, heart fluttering. We still haven't completed the bond. The words trembled out, shy and bold all at once. His pupils dilated, wolf stirring. I gave you time on purpose, he said softly. Everything has spun so fast. I did not want our mating to feel like another decree. It could never, she whispered, breath catching. Still. He cupped her cheek, thumb tracing under her eye. When we do this, we do it because you want it. Not because the council expects heirs. Not because the temple spoke of prophecies. Her wolf stretched, rolling in her chest. I am so very sure I want it, she confessed, voice barely above a whisper. His control wavered then, just enough that she saw it. The flash of teeth, the burning hunger in his eyes, the way his fingers tightened on her waist. Careful little Omega, he murmured, leaning in, breath brushing her lips. When my wolf realizes he has permission, I'm not sure the moon herself could stop him. Her laugh shattered into a soft gasp as his mouth finally met hers. The kiss was not a claim, not yet. It was a promise. Slow, reverent, but threaded with a heat that made her knees weak. She clutched his cloak, fingers curling in the fur, as the bond flared bright, her mark burning gold and silver at once. The kingdom might have fallen away in that moment. There was only the taste of him, the way he inhaled like he'd been drowning for years, and had finally found air. When they broke apart, their foreheads rested together, breaths mingling in little clouds. Soon, he whispered. When the laws are inked and the council has stopped shouting, when the packs have had time to see that the world did not end because an Omega chose her own fate. Then, Lyra, I will mark you under the crescent moon. And if the world does end, she asked softly. He smiled, wolf sweet and dangerous. Then we will go down howling Luna. Together. Her heart steadied on that word. Together. Spring crept in slowly, like a shy Omega edging into a crowded hall. Snow melted from the castle walls, exposing dark stone veined with pale lichen. The forest burst into green again, buds unfurling on branches that had been bare and skeletal all winter. The village beyond the outer gates shook off its frost, filling with market stalls and laughter, and the smell of baking bread. Lyra walked those streets now, not as a hidden bargaining chip but as Luna, her cloak trimmed with the same fur as Caelan's, her bond mark uncovered. Children ran alongside her, some shifting tiny ears or tails in excitement, their scents bright. Omegas peeked from doorways with awe and relief, some daring to step forward, to speak. My lady, one whispered, wringing her hands. The alpha of my pack wants to delay our mating until he's sure the bond is mutual. He says he heard you speak in the hall, and maybe he'd been wrong before. Lyra's eyes stung. He is already a better alpha than most, she said. Tell him I said so. They visited the Moon Temple too, not for crisis this time, but for quiet. Mara met them at the steps, smiling wryly. I was beginning to think the goddess had decided to move in permanently after that night, she said. We had 3 visions in a row from young Omegas the next week. All about doors opening. Lyra laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in months. At least she has a theme. They knelt together at the edge of the pool, Lyra's fingers trailing in the cool water. Her reflection was different now. Still the same face, same eyes, but the set of her shoulders had changed. The girl who had sat trembling on the Alpha King's lap, to avoid another man's touch, had become the woman who sat beside him on the throne to keep countless Omegas free. Do you regret anything? Mara asked gently when Caelan wandered off to confer with an acolyte about temple repairs. Lyra considered. The fear sometimes, she admitted. The way my heart still jolts when someone raises their voice, even in debate. I don't think that will vanish overnight. That is not a flaw, Mara said. It is a memory, and memories shape wisdom. Lyra's gaze slid toward Caelan. He stood near a carved pillar, gesturing as he spoke, silver eyes intent. A pair of young acolytes tried not to stare too hard at the Alpha King while pretending to listen. He carries his own regrets, Mara continued, following her gaze. About laws he did not change sooner. Battles he won with victory marked in silent Omega's tears. He has done more than any Alpha before him, Lyra said softly. Yes, Mara agreed. But kings are often hardest on themselves. Lyra dipped her fingers deeper into the water. Ripples spread, distorting her reflection. When she drew her hand back, droplets clung to her skin, sliding down to her bond mark. For a heartbeat, it glowed brighter where the water touched, as if answering some unseen kiss. Lyra smiled. That evening, as the crescent moon rose over the castle like a hook of silver, Caelan came to her with a look she had come to recognize. Half wolf, half man, all vulnerable. Walk with me, he said. She followed him to the highest tower, where the wind tugged at her hair, and the world spread out in shadow and starlight. The village fires dotted the darkness below like fallen constellations. The forest whispered beyond, full of sleeping wolves and rustling leaves. Do you remember, he asked quietly, the first time you sat here? She blinked. We've never. He tugged her gently toward the parapet. Not here precisely. But the night you stole my lap in the throne hall, this is where I came after you fell asleep in my chamber. I stood here and wondered whether I'd just doomed the kingdom or finally done something worthy of my bloodline. She laughed softly. You did both. Probably. His smile was crooked, eyes soft. Either way, I knew I couldn't undo it. I couldn't pretend my wolf hadn't recognized you. He turned fully then, taking her hands in his. The wind tossed his hair, tugging at his cloak, but his grip was steady as stone. Lyra of Willowfen, he said, voice low and solemn. Omega, Luna, breaker of my carefully controlled life. Will you let me claim you fully? Not as king claiming Luna, but as Caelan claiming the woman who sits in my bones like a second soul. Tears sprang to her eyes so fast she almost laughed. You are very bad at pretending this is simply politics, she whispered. Good, he murmured. Because it isn't. Her wolf pressed against her ribs, ears pricked, tail high. Yes, she said, voice shaking but sure. Mark me, Alpha King. Make this bond as real on my skin as it is in my heart. His eyes darkened, silver swallowed by hungry shadow. Turn around, he said, voice dropping into a growl that shivered down her spine. She obeyed. The wind bit cold against the side of her neck as she swept her hair aside. His hands landed on her shoulders, thumb stroking once along the line where neck met collarbone. Her entire body trembled, not with fear, but with anticipation so sharp it bordered on pain. Last chance, he breathed against her ear. Say stop and I will. Never, she whispered. His wolf surged. Teeth grazed her skin, testing. Her breath hitched. Then he bit. Pain and ecstasy exploded together, a white-hot rush that shot from her neck to her toes. Her mark flared, Not the crescent on her wrist but a new one, blooming under his teeth like silver fire. She cried out, not in agony but in an overwhelming sense of completion, like a howl finally leaving a long silent throat. The bond snapped tight between them, no longer just a thrumming thread but a living, pulsing thing. She felt him, his wolf's exultant roar, his heart pounding, the way his knees almost buckled as the bond flooded his veins. He pulled back slowly, tongue soothing the bite. His breath came harsh against her ear. Mine, he growled softly. She turned, chest heaving, eyes bright. Yours, she whispered. And you. He smiled, slow and fierce. I have belonged to you since the first time your scent crossed my throne hall, he said. This just makes it official. She laughed, wet and shaky and wildly happy, as he pulled her into his arms under the crescent moon. The kingdom did not change in a single season. Old habits clung like burrs. Some alphas grumbled that omegas had grown too bold since the new laws. Some counselors tried to slip sly clauses into trade agreements, weaving in language that smelled suspiciously like the old bonds. Lyra caught them. Every time. She had grown up watching deals carved into people's futures. She recognized the scent of hidden chains when it drifted across the council table. Omegas now have the right to refuse any mate without a true bond, she said one afternoon, voice calm but unyielding as it echoed through the throne hall. If you write alliances that punish pacts for honoring those refusals, you may as well carve the old law back into stone. Lord Wren, a thick-necked alpha from the western ridges, scowled. Alliances matter, he protested. We cannot rule by romance alone. The kingdom will be stronger, Caelan cut in, leaning back on the throne, silver eyes cool. If it is built on packs who actually wish to stand beside one another, not on omegas traded like coin. A murmur rippled through the hall. Some alphas looked away ashamed. Others shifted uncomfortably, not yet ready to admit aloud that the old world had been cruel. Let me show you something, Lyra said. She rose from her Luna seat and nodded to a guard by the door. A moment later, an omega stepped into the hall. A young woman with dark braids and a nervous scent, a faint crescent glowing on her wrist. This is Sarah, of the River Pack, Lyra told the gathered lords. Under the old laws, she was pledged to an allied alpha she had never met. He was kind enough, by all reports. He would have provided for her. But when she met him, there was no bond. Her wolf stayed silent. The girl swallowed but nodded. I felt nothing, she managed. Not fear, not pull. Just emptiness. Lyra turned to the council. Under the new law, she refused the mating. The packs involved now sit at this table. She gestured to two alphas, both watching Sarah with a mix of pride and chagrin. And yet, no war has broken out. No rivers run with blood. They found another way to seal their treaty, one that did not require an unwilling Omega's future. Alpha Varric, Sarah's would-be mate, stood slowly. We traded river rights for timber instead, he said gruffly. And I met my fated bond in my own village a month later. I thanked the Luna for forcing us to look twice at what we called tradition. Laughter, soft and genuine, rippled through the hall. Lyra's shoulders eased. You see, she said, meeting the council's eyes. We are not tearing your alliances apart. We are asking you to build them on stronger foundations. Caelan watched her with something like awe under his calm exterior. He had seen her frightened and fierce, seen her trembling in his lap, and standing tall before a goddess. But this steady, patient reshaping of the kingdom's bones, might be the bravest thing she had done yet. After the council dismissed, they walked together along the inner balcony overlooking the training yard. The sun slanted low, pouring gold over the stone, turning the wolves below into moving shadows. Do you miss anything? Caelan asked quietly. From the life you thought you'd have. Lyra considered. She had imagined a small cottage on the edge of Willowfen, perhaps a quiet alpha with kind eyes, pups tumbling in the snow. She had never dared picture a throne. I miss the sound of the river near my old house, she admitted. I miss my mother's stew. I miss knowing every tree in the woods by name. She looked up at him, eyes soft. But I do not miss being small. His throat worked. You were never small, he said. They just kept you in rooms that were too tight for you. She smiled, leaning into his side. Below, a pair of Omega children chased each other, squealing, one half shifting small ears as their alpha father watched with a fond grin. No one shushed them. No one dragged them away from the training yard, saying it was for alphas only. They'll grow up in a different world, Lyra murmured. One where sitting on the Alpha King's lap is a scandal because of romance, not because of law. Caelan chuckled low and warm. You will never let me forget that entrance, will you? Never, she said. It was the first time I chose myself. He stopped walking, turning her gently to face him. The balcony was awash in sunset now, the sky painted in copper and rose, the crescent moon already a ghostly curve above them. You didn't just choose yourself, he said. You chose me. And then you chose all of them. His gaze flicked to the courtyard, the halls, the far-off village. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that choice was worth it. It already is, she whispered. And for once every part of her, the girl from Willowfen, the Luna of Ardentia, the wolf with silver eyes inside her bones, agreed. On the anniversary of the night the moon goddess appeared in the temple, the kingdom gathered beneath an open sky. Torches ringed the outer courtyard, their flames swaying in the evening breeze. Wolves from every allied pack mingled. Mountain and river, forest and coast, scents blending into a great, wild tapestry. The temple acolytes had strung silver bells along the walls. They chimed softly whenever the wind changed, like distant stars laughing. At the center of the courtyard, a raised stone platform held a pair of carved chairs. The Alpha King's throne and the Luna's seat. Tonight, though, Caelan sat not in full armor but in a simple dark tunic, his crown laid casually on the armrest. Lyra perched sideways across his lap, skirts spilling over his legs, her head tucked under his chin. It was not a political gesture this time. It was a story they were telling, a reminder. She sat on the Alpha King's lap to avoid her chosen mate. One of the new pups whispered in awe nearby, repeating the tale as if it were myth. And the moon goddess changed the laws cause of it. Partly, Lyra murmured to Caelan, hiding a smile. We might need to correct the details later. Let them have their version, he said softly into her hair. In theirs, you startled a goddess awake by sheer stubbornness. I find that fitting. Music drifted up from the lower steps, flutes and drums and the steady thrum of a stringed lyre. Packs danced in loose circles, some wolves half-shifted, tails flicking, others entirely human, hands linked. No formal claiming tonight, no forced alliances. Just celebration. An Omega from the coastal pack spun with her alpha, laughing as he nearly tripped over his own feet. Another stood with her Lunamate, two women pressed cheek to cheek, their bond marks glowing faintly as they swayed. Lyra watched them with her heart in her throat. Do you ever think about what the moon goddess said? She asked quietly. About her prophecy being clumsy? All the time, Caelan admitted. But I also think maybe that's the point. She started something, then put it in our hands to fix properly. He squeezed her waist. You've done more of the fixing than she did. She gave us the chance, Lyra said. You gave it room. I just stepped where my wolf pushed. He huffed a soft laugh. Your wolf shoved, he corrected. Onto my lap. She elbowed him lightly. You're never going to let that go, are you? Not when it was the moment my world changed, he replied. The bells chimed as a breeze rolled through the courtyard. The crescent moon climbed higher, bright and clear. Somewhere along the outer wall, a lone wolf lifted its head and howled. Not in mourning or warning, but in a long, ringing note of joy. More voices joined, one by one. Alphas, omegas, betas, pups just learning to use their lungs. The sound spiraled up into the night, a living tapestry of voices woven under the moon's watchful eye. Lyra felt the howl in her bones. Their bond hummed with it, sending warmth through her chest. She tilted her head back and added her own voice, softer but steady. Caelan followed a heartbeat later, his deeper notes wrapping around hers like armor around a heartbeat. When the last echoes faded, the courtyard was filled with quiet smiles and glistening eyes. No one seemed quite able to speak. Something had settled over the kingdom in that moment. A shared knowing that the world had shifted, and they had survived the tilt. Look, Caelan murmured. Lyra followed his gaze to the temple roofline. For an instant, Just an instant, she thought she saw a pale figure standing there, a suggestion of a woman made of light and shadow, hair like falling stars watching. Then a cloud slid across the moon, and the roof was empty. Do you think she's satisfied? Lyra whispered. I think, Caelan said, pressing a kiss to her temple, that if she isn't, she can come down here and argue with you herself. I'd like to see that. Lyra laughed, the sound catching on a sudden swell of emotion. I would argue with a goddess for them, she said, looking out across the gathered packs. For every Omega who thought she was born to be a chain. You already did, he reminded her quietly. You argued with councils and treaties and war itself. You chose a different future and made the world bend around it. She turned in his lap then, facing him fully as torches crackled and bells chimed. His hands settled on her hips, steady and sure. Thank you, she said softly. For what? He asked. For saying, I won't let him touch you, she murmured. For meaning it. For giving me space to become more than the girl who was afraid to walk down a red carpet alone. His eyes softened. You were always more than that girl, he said. I just got the honor of watching you remember it. She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. The world fell away to torchlight and distant laughter, the hum of their bond, the familiar weight of his hands. Alpha King, she whispered. Luna, he breathed in answer. Their kiss was unhurried, content, steeped in all the storms they had weathered together. The packs around them only chuckled and turned back to their own dances. No one shouted scandal. No one tried to drag her away. She sat on the Alpha King's lap again, not to avoid a mate she did not choose, but because she had chosen him. Fully, freely, fiercely. Above them, the crescent moon curved bright and sharp, like a wolf-satisfied smile in the dark. And for the first time in generations, the bonds that stretched across the kingdom felt less like chains and more like constellations, shining lines of connection, chosen and cherished, under the moon goddess's watchful eye. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more Alpha and Omega stories. Don't forget to like the video, it really helps me out, and comment your favorite moment below.